Yeah, we can get started right away. We'll have this recorded, so can send it afterward. It looks like a couple other people are joining, but thanks for joining. This is our first customer-only webinar where we're sharing a new feature that we launched in Arrows. My name is Kim. I might have met a couple of you during the sales process early on at Arrows, but I'm just here mostly to help with the chat and Q&A, so definitely throw questions in about Gates as they come, but Sherelle's going to take most of it and kind of run through the feature and all of that. And I'll be kind of here in the background.
Cool. Thanks, Kim. Hi, everyone. I probably know most of you since I've chatted with you at some point, but I'm also excited for trying these office hours. Would love, obviously, questions, interactions, have at it in the chat, and we'll try to get to them as we go. But also, if you have any feedback on the format, on what future sessions you'd like to see, that would be super helpful for us. But we're just trying to be better at, especially when we launch newer and more complex features, doing a better job of explaining the value to folks. And we thought this live format might be helpful. So for those of you that are here, Fabiola, Michael, Niels, feel free to jump with stuff in the chat and I'll adjust accordingly. But at a high level, just wanted to do kind of an actual live demo of Gates. The feature was designed, some of you have probably heard of and or have been using dynamic branching, which is a inclusion and exclusion piece, but the Gates piece was designed so that it actually can control some of that momentum or control progress throughout plans, while giving you control over what customers can or can't see, having set up automations on those gates or blockers throughout the plan to unlock them. Things like a different task being completed or a phase being completed, or even a HubSpot condition with some of that dynamic stuff you're used to. And especially powerful in cases where I've seen used effectively where like there are longer plans that might feel overwhelming and you want to control some of that overwhelming feeling. In cases where you want a very specific action to be done before someone can go on. I'll use an example of like signing your contract in our own plans. We have gates now after or before signing your contract. So that it's a task we want people to do before they go on and schedule time or go on to the next set of tasks. And they give you a lot of flexibility because you can essentially put them between tasks or between phases. You can customize the labels on them and you can have them automatically send customers emails to get them back into plans. So they are fully designed from the lens of making the customer experience a little bit more streamlined, but also you as internal plan coordinators and managers having a lot more control and reducing the manual back and forth that we've all done. I am guilty of this as well. I know some of you are. We've used things like internal tasks and then we mark them manually external, or using dynamic branching to kind of control that visibility piece, but gates are the actual answer for that. So let me jump into edit mode and set a couple up and we can play with them. So if you can see my screen, what you'll see now is a plan. I'm doing this on a plan level. You'll want to set these up obviously on a template level so that when you create plans off of them, all those gates get transferred over. Much like everything else in Arrows, gates are also editable on that plan level. So if you want to change something, adjust something, add or delete something, you can totally do it plan by plan. But a couple things to point out here. I am now in participant view on this plan. We also changed this a tiny bit if you haven't seen this, but now you can jump between participant and internal view to really understand what your customers are going to see versus what you see. Additionally, in the internal view, I'm just going to plug an extra feature while I'm here. You can now also bulk mark tasks done from in here as managers. So if there are internal tasks or stuff you're working on, you don't have to jump into every task specifically. Your customers will not be able to do that. They still have to go task by task, but you are going to see some more managerial type of access make its way into this tab. Now for gates. So from edit mode, what you'll see is I already have one here, so I'm going to delete that. What you'll see is in edit mode, the option when you hover between phases or between tasks to now insert what we are calling a gate, which is ultimately a blocking mechanism to prevent people from going forward until a condition of your choice is met. So in this example, I mentioned signing your contract being a common one. Let's say I did add a gate here, and I'm going to jump between view and edit just to give you kind of a build of this. But you can see now in this case, this task is accessible to me. If I jump into participant view to really show you, this task is accessible to me. I can open it, I can interact with it. The next few tasks in this specific phase are not available to me. That's by design. You'll get a message saying these are locked. We show you the name in case you want some sort of hint as to what's coming, but we don't let customers actually do anything with them or click them until this gate has been opened. Before I go further, there's also a layer in here where you can choose what that locked view looks like for the participant. So if I were to turn this hide locked tasks and phases on, now you can see in this view mode, we don't even show them there's anything beyond here. So if you've ever used sequential phasing, this was kind of that logic. But this just lets them know there is more here. You just can't specifically see them. Or if I want you to see them, this is how I use it in my world. I want people to know there is more to come. I just don't want you to be able to do anything with it. So that's the most basic version of that gate. If I were to jump into edit mode on this gate, you'll see that currently it is set up so that when all previous tasks are completed before it, go ahead and unlock that. And for the sake of the simple version, I'll come in here, I'll go into this task, mark it done. And now if I'm back in that plan overview, you'll see the gate is gone as far as the customer is concerned, and these next two tasks are available. So that is its most basic version. Now let's play with some additional ones and add some extra layers in here. So let's say I want to let people go on to these two tasks and then stop them from doing account setup. And I still want another gate after these two phases are completed. And for the phase level ones, I'm going to come in here and add some more complexity. So one thing you can do is change the label itself. So this starts to act as a communication tool as well in your behalf to customers. So in this case, I want to say you have to schedule your kickoff call before going forward. Obviously, a very direct label here. I would use something more generic if you're setting this up, but for the sake of showing you the actual power, you can get very granular and get very specific. And now in view mode, I'm also trusting that this starts to act as a communication tool to me, to customers. So when the question inevitably comes up of why can't I go on to the rest of these, hopefully this answers that question and I have to come in here and do that thing. Now I've made this very specific, but the generic gate was still being opened by just everything before it being marked done. So if I go back into editing that gate, I can also get specific with it and say, I actually specifically want that scheduled kickoff call to be done before that gate opens up. For the phase level stuff, you'll most commonly use specific phases being done or all previous tasks before it being done. This basically replicates sequential phasing. If you were using sequential phasing at some point, we've migrated all your plans over to this version already and added those gates. But you can now change that message, like I said, pick the option that you want, whether it's specific tasks, specific phases, or even a HubSpot condition. So you can branch off of that as well. And as you do that, you can see these start to build in view mode. And now I'm allowing you to see there's more to do here, you to see there's more to do here, but you'd have to actually finish everything before this to unlock this gate. Then you'd have to finish both of these two phases to unlock this gate, and then you'd be able to go into launch mode. So I skipped a phase here for the sake of demo. You can obviously add them between wherever you want, and you can add them between individual tasks wherever you want to. Now some best practices. I probably would not go putting them between every single task and every single phase because you do want to also encourage momentum. So use them where they make sense. But a couple of these examples I've seen where they make a lot of sense is things like, I need you to do X, Y, Z before scheduling your next call. A lot of my customers use them in a way to, when you are collecting data or collecting information or asking people to upload stuff and you want to go do a quality check or just a sanity check on that, I've seen where it says things like, Arrows is reviewing your information, we'll let you know when that's done. The third kind of advantage of gates is that piece I just touched on, is the we'll let you know when it's done piece, which you can also build into gates automatically now as well. So if you go into edit mode again here, by default, this is off, but you can also set up now custom email notifications to let the customer actually know, hey, this next set of things is done. To them, the word gates probably means nothing, but it's more so that, hey, this task is available or the set of phases is available. And you can customize this as well now, both the subject and the email body. We'll give you a preview of what it looks like. If you are on one of our white labeled plans where you've changed this email alias, this will act in the same way. So this will come from your custom domain, your custom message, and essentially just a link back to that task. But what this now also serves the purpose of is, let's say you are doing that review task where you're going in and doing a quality check on the uploaded template. That in and of itself can be a task in here where you can say review is done. That can be the condition that unlocks this gate. That then automatically sends an email to the customer, essentially drawing them back in with that link. As managers, you all also will have the option to manually unlock these. So if I wanted to come in here as a plan manager, I can just override all those settings and manually unlock this. I use this often too when I'm really just trying to trigger that email communication to the customer. So what I want to do in this example is let Kim know she can go onto account setup. I did some review up here, and I can just unlock this and have this programmed to send a message exactly to whoever that next task is assigned to, so that they can keep going and encourage some of that progress. Gates, much like everything else, are drag and drop, so you can assign them and move them between phases and tasks. The default on this is off because it often might be in a flow where customers are already making progress and you don't want to actually send them an email or a communication. In this sign your contract example, I would probably not use an email notification because I want you to sign the contract. Once you do that, great, the next task is available. Keep going and add your information in here. Where it makes sense, or you need a pause, or you need to do something on your side, and then you want to add a layer of communication, that's where that email can also kick in. As you saw, this is obviously very flexible, so you can pick and choose where you want those emails, where you want the custom label, where you want the default label. And then the last thing I will kind of touch on before I jump into some questions and thoughts is, now I've kind of lost what the last thing I was going to touch on is. Oh, when you are in that view mode and participant view, if a gate is unlocked, it's just out of the way. So again, there's not any sort of like noise or customer interference in that regard. But picking and choosing where you want them obviously is a lot more powerful and a lot more flexible than you had access to before. Think about them as a means to just prevent kind of progress or block progress where it makes sense, and also leverage them as more of a communication tool where it makes sense to both indicate to customers what exactly has to happen and what you want them to do or what you want the thing to be that unlocks it to keep them going forward. So I've already found a ton of value in my own world. I specifically, this is a real example I use in my accounts where I want people to sign their contract before they book time with me. And I'm thinking about where I can use it to just like, especially in the Arrow setup, as customers on this call know, it can get pretty complex when you get to some of the HubSpot pieces of the integration, and that can feel overwhelming or feel like there's a lot going on. So I try to limit some of that progress in my plans now, really to enhance the customer experience. And again, if customers are just breezing through it and marking tasks done, great. Much like dynamic due dates, gates will just unlock themselves and keep going. If they get stuck or if they get hung up on something, that's where you can leverage that message to pull them back in. And I honestly, if you're unsure about specific tasks or want them in your plans, but they just feel like they're a little too early in the process and want people to do them a few months in, that's also where gates, especially when you use the HubSpot condition powered with like a property date inside of HubSpot or something, that can unlock that gate at a very specific time or a specific date. So I'll see often in people's onboarding processes, I don't want a customer to do XYZ until their 6th week of using the product. That's a great example of where a time-stamped gate using a HubSpot property can become super effective. Kim, anything I missed that you've thought about since launching and playing gates?
This was great and really thorough and helpful. But I think the thing that I was going to mention that you kind of touched on earlier, I think a really strong use case for this is we see a lot of Arrow's customers are collecting documentation in the onboarding process. That's like a core use case that we see a lot of our customers doing. And so I think this comes in great when that's the case, where you're collecting documentation, then often your team has to go and do some amount of work afterwards. So it's like, okay, just get us all the docs, right? Like you're getting your customer into the plan, get us all the docs, send everything over, and now we'll go do work. You don't have to worry about things for how many days or a week or whatever. And then they get that notification that brings them back into the plan. So So I think that's really powerful and a really great use case. Same for like kind of a workaround to like an approval workflow for documentation or design or something like that. And then I think the other kind of point I was going to make is we do have actually customers. This is like a great problem to have, but we have customers whose customers are moving through their onboarding plan too quickly, and they actually want to slow them down, which is amazing and great. It's a great problem to have, but this kind of helps with that too. So kind of keeping them at the pace that they need to go at in order to kind of learn or do the things at the time that you need them to do them, rather than breezing through the entire plan in one go, which is obviously great. Great thing for people, I'm sure, who are using spreadsheets or something before Arrows, but this kind of like keeps them in a structured process that you're designing.
Yeah, that's a very good example. The second one you shared there too. Because even sometimes I've had customers say my customers just don't exactly know how Arrows works on day one either. And they're just marking things done in their rapid fire. Like you can actually prevent some of that now and layer in some of that built-in communication. And I love your examples of the review, because that is a very common example in our world too, of we need to actually review these things or set up something for you or integrate something on our side. Data migrations is a very common example where we're collecting data from you and importing it into a different system and having to do a few checks before you can actually use that. And what's powerful, like I showed, the way you can set these between tasks is you can actually have me go on to other things if you wanted me to, like future phases, where I can do additional stuff, but still block me within that phase from the next steps potentially for that review that needs to happen. So a lot of flexibility and a lot of room to customize them.
Cool. No real questions in the chat yet, but definitely share if you have anything. If you've been trying Gates and have questions or have questions after this, let us know. We have a little over 10 minutes left, but we can definitely end early if there's no other questions.
Or feedback. If
or
any
feedback.
Of you are, looking at this and thinking, or if you have exact examples you want to talk about, we can also talk about your examples. Either way, I'll probably hang out until the end if anyone has questions or thoughts. But yeah, that's a high level kind of overview of it.
I am going to add a link to the Help Center article. Cheryl wrote this and did a video for it, so it's a lot of the same content, but if you want to share this with your team, that'll be great too.
One question that I will proactively answer that I've heard come up a few times is I don't believe today, if you set these up, they will publish to existing plans. So if you set them up on your template, they will only be on new plans going forward. We don't have the publish feature like we do at the task level. So think about them in that regard. And if you're just trying to do like a general review or optimization of your accounts, another good way to think about these is look at where customers tend to get stuck in your plans today and see if there's some sort of gate that will message or communicate to them to come back, and can that be used as kind of a means to draw them back into, if you know there's kind of a common gap in your process.
Cool. Any other bonus features, Cheryl, that we not Gates related that you want to highlight? You already kind of threw out the completing tasks from the plan view as a coordinator. Actually, maybe a good thing if you want to touch on kind of like the difference between you touched on it in the beginning, but like why you would use a gate rather than dynamic branching.
Yeah. So a branch a branch technically is something that is there or not there. So it's less of I think of gates as like a visibility setting, whereas branches are an inclusion exclusion setting. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, let me show you a dynamic branch in here. So I can set up a phase and say, I don't want this phase to appear in this plan until a very specific condition is met. In HubSpot, I'm going to pick one where I know for sure it won't work. So on this thing, what I've done is basically set up a filter or a condition. Oh, this is yeah, that is what I wanted to do. I was trying to set up a condition where it would never work. And so in turn, this phase will always be excluded. So if I jump into view mode here, that phase that I just created is not a thing in this plan. And before we had gates, this feature was often used as kind of a makeshift workaround for what gates is actually supposed to solve for, which is that visibility layer. But the way gates or branches work is that phase or task that is branched is not a thing until it is a thing. So it's not counted in the progress bar. It's not counted in the number of tasks on the plan. If those conditions are never met, customers would never see that phase or task by design. Whereas, and where that's commonly used is things like, I'm buying a product, they have 5 sub products, and I only want to see instructions for 3 of them. So I could show you very specifically those 3 steps. Gates, on the flip side of that, are actually a visibility piece. So like these tasks all exist in here, and these phases all exist in here. They're not included or excluded, they just are here. And I'm trying to choose at what point you get to access them or have visibility into them. So they can overlap, and actually I've seen them work well together for certain scenarios. But for the most part, think about gates as like a visibility and progress blocker type of thing, whereas branches are more of a actually included or excluded version of that. In an ideal world, all your gates become unlocked and you get to see all those tasks and all those phases as you meet those conditions and make progress through a plan, whereas branches might never appear by design to specific customers.
Cool. Sandra had a question. I did answer it in the chat, but about the gates being applied to templates, but you can't publish changes from templates to plans for gates. I just clarified in the chat that you can add gates to individual plans. It's just, and Sherelle, maybe if you don't mind showing the, like on a template level, publishing changes from templates to plans, because people might not be aware of that. It's a feature that we've had for a while now, but it's not super easily discoverable. So you can show what that is, and then that's what's not available with gates right now.
Yeah, good question, Sandra. So what I was saying, so now I'm on a template. If I add a gate here, I'm only adding it to this template, and in turn, any new plans I create from this template, not ones that have already been created from this template. So this would only be here going forward on new plans. On an individual plan, you can go in there and add them like I was just doing in that previous screen. But if you add them to a template, they will not be added to plans that had already been created off of that template. Whereas what Kim is referencing to is at the task level down here, there is a publish tasks button. It's a little subtle on purpose. But what this lets you do is when you change tasks inside of a template or edit them and hit this button down here, this will detect those changes and tell you, all right, you have 3 plans that have already been created from this template. Do you want to publish that change to it? So if I hit this button, it would add that word, hey, that I just added to those 3 existing plans. Whereas with gates, that will not work today. If you add gates to a template, it'll only be on that template. And any new plans you create will have those gates, but any existing plans will not have those gates on them. Cool. Yeah, that one is exciting. It's purposely a little subtle because it's also a newer feature and a very complex one, as you can imagine. So we're still figuring out. Eventually, I think it will become like a template level type setting, or even allow you to do settings and maybe even gates at some point. But for now, it's really designed, and its purpose is, Sandra, mostly for, especially early on when building new templates and rolling out a new process. Like a lot of things change. We don't exactly know what we want our tasks to look and feel like. But that gives you kind of the comfort of, I can start using this and then publish those changes as I go. But great question.
Yeah.
You mentioned other new things that people might not be aware of. So on the templates page, we did add, this was commonly asked for, a better way of organizing templates. So you can now add what we call template categories. Think of them essentially as like folders. So you can add different categories, and then you can also sort your things by category in here. So you can actually see templates in a little bit cleaner of a way. We also added template statuses in here. So common things we would see in plans as things like inactive or old version or draft version. Now you can actually set statuses on those templates. And what that allows you to do is pick and choose which ones your teams can actually use to create plans off of. So only active templates can be used in the create plan workflow, whether that's from HubSpot or Arrows. But I do a lot of drafts of my templates as an example, and I'll set them in draft mode when I'm actually editing stuff and setting things up, and then put them as active and also archive old ones so that they're out of this view. The other kind of nice feature that is also a little subtle in here, but you can see now on the templates page a number of plans created from that template. And if you ever wanted to just filter to those plans directly, if you hit that button and hit the See Plan List, this takes you to the plans page, but it automatically applies all those filters from that template. So I would be seeing those 16 plans in this example. I found that it was easy to look at because I have multiple templates as well. There's no limit to the number of templates you can have in your account. So I have different templates for different onboarding types, and then I can quickly isolate those plans and take action on them from there. And yeah, I'll leave it at that because I want most of the focus to be on the Gates world, but let us know if you have any questions, any follow-up, any thoughts. If this format worked for you, we'll probably do a few more of these office hours in the future. And then, yeah, as you start using it, if you have questions, obviously email myself or Kim, or drop us some feedback in the Arrows feedback section directly in your product when you're in there, or obviously email us at help@arrows. But if we have no other questions, I might give everyone a couple minutes back.
Yep, I think we're good. Thanks, everyone.